Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am your moderator for this afternoon. My name is J. Roel B. Similia, and welcome to our webinar today entitled Evolving as a Digital Scholar, Teaching and Researching in a Digital World. This is organized by the Department of Professional Education, College of Education, MSU-IIT. We would also like to acknowledge the Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Amelia T. Buwan, the Assistant Dean, Associate Professor Oswardo Pabatang Jr., the chairpersons and faculty members of the different departments, and the principal and the faculty of the Integrated Developmental School. And of course, I would also like to welcome our guest speaker this afternoon, live all the way from Belgium, who will be properly introduced later. We are also live by our YouTube channel, so we'd like to welcome our participants in the live stream. For our faculty members, please sign in to our attendance. The attendance link will be sent to our chat box. The link to the evaluation form will be sent later during the question and answer portion, and it will be also open during that time. So, without much ado, may we request our participants to join us in the singing of our Philippine National Anthem, which will be followed by a prayer.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, kaya sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y bumay. Lupang binilang, kuya ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay hinatang tulatawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitingin, makituwin at araw niya kailan pa may magtitingin. Lumanang araw niyang warhagit magsikta, mo'y langit sa piling mo. Ang higaya na barangay mga hangin, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
right, I'm back. So, to our participants, if you are in a good position right now, we would like to encourage you to open your camera as well so that we will be seeing your beautiful and handsome faces. Before we proceed, we would like to also remind our participants that we have a Q&A portion. So please, yeah, I like that. Thank you so much. Please open your camera. Hello. Once again, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good
Hi,
afternoon,
afternoon,
hi.
Sir
Sir
Cousin
Jim.
Jim. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. You may remain opening your cameras until the end of the session. Okay, so we would also remind our participants that we have a Q&A portion. So please prepare your questions and they will be addressed right after the talk of our guest speaker. To formally open this program, please help me welcome the Assistant Dean of the College of Education, Associate Professor Oswardo Pabatang Jr. Sir, your virtual applause, please.
pandemic has brought significant changes in the landscape of our educational system here in the Philippines and all over the world. Higher education institutions has left no choice but to switch to distance learning. In our case in MSU-IIT, we implement the innovative flexible learning modality or NFlex modality. That is why we have the remote teaching and learning, especially in the fields of education. The NFlex modality has brought intense changes in the way teachers deliver the lessons and the way students learn. Currently, SED is conducting a specialized training for SED faculty peer facilitators. As a teacher education institution, SED also needs to conduct research on the current teaching learning modality being implemented in SED and in the integrated developmental school as our laboratory school. With this, we have invited Professor Dr. Wim van Pitihen from KU Leuven, Belgium, as our visiting professor from January to July 2021. His expertise and innovation in education and distance learning through lectures and research consultation will be an opportunity for us to improve and sustain our research culture as we are moving forward as a research university. On behalf of our college dean, Dr. Amelia Buan, and the MSU-IIT administration, we are very much grateful for Dr. Wim for granting a request to be one of our visiting professor for this semester. Sir, thank you very much. I would like to commend Dr. Wallace and the faculty of the Department of Professional Education for hosting this activity. We pray that we will have fruitful and meaningful experiences as we start this webinar series. To all the participants, we wish you good luck. Thank you so much and welcome to this webinar series. And once again, good afternoon.
Once again, that was the Assistant Dean of the College, Associate Professor Oswardo Pabatang Jr. Let us give him our virtual applause. to formally introduce our highly esteemed, very competent guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, may I call on the faculty member of the Department of Professional Education, Dr. Shalini Teresa Piruelis. Round of applause, please.
Our speaker is a professor and faculty of
Hindi i-close
education
yung video, hindi makita ka.
from 2008 till 2012. He was the head of Philippines
Hindi
Region
ikaw yung may
Development
control.
Center and
Ano
later
bang video
became
ba
the
i-close niya?
Teaching and Learning Department. He is a policy coordinator on learning technologies with a special focus on multi-campus and distance education. He is teaching courses on media production, development of learning materials, and professional and intercultural engineering skills. He regularly gives trainings in different countries on innovation in education, is actively involved in different networks of universities to improve education in an international context, a regular panel member of review committees to assess quality of education in Flanders and the Netherlands, and partner in many implementation and development projects mostly financed by the European Commission. He is heavily engaged in development cooperation projects with the South, mainly financed by FLIR. One of these projects led me to KU Leuven for the audiovisual learning materials training in 2012. He then became one of my advisors for my dissertation project. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you Professor Dr. Engineer Wim van Pittighem.
Thank you.
You may now present your presentation, Dr.
Okay.
Pittighem.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this nice introduction. And also, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be your guest speaker for today. Yeah, it's a pleasure when Shelani asked me to come and present some of my work and share some of my thoughts with you, to accept that invitation. It has been a long while that I now know Shelani, and so when she came up with the idea to come as a visiting professor and help you and share ideas with you, I couldn't resist, let's say. So it's my pleasure to present you today a lecture on something which is very close to my heart, and that is the professionalization of teachers, researchers, academics in general, and help them to be better prepared for the digital world, the world in which we are living nowadays, we as teachers, but also and especially our students. So the title of my presentation is Evolving as a Digital Scholar, Teaching and Researching in a Digital World as subtitle. Let me start with some introduction. In the title, I've mentioned the word scholar. The reason is that I consider everyone in the university as an important actor in what's happening there. And usually we tend to think about the academic professors, but I think that there is many more people that are playing a role in teaching and researching at the university, not just the ones that are appointed professor. And I go back to a book that was written by Ernest Boyer in the 90s already, where he is explaining what scholarship in general means. Scholarship scholarship for someone who is working at the university. And there is 4 aspects that he considers as important for scholars. And they are, in a way, they are related to what we traditionally know as academics are teachers or researchers and are delivering community service. But he goes a little bit further and describes scholarship as based on these 4 pillars as mentioned on the slide. One pillar is related to discovery. That means, well, it's clear that the link here is very close with research. Scholars should be able to discover new things, to explore the world, and to try to find new pathways, be a bit adventurous. That's one aspect of scholarship. But you also need to be able, if you're exploring the world and you're finding new things, you should also be able to link these things together and to make that to integrate all this information, new things, new ideas into something which is which has an added value. So you need to be able to assemble these new things into something new, let's say. And once you found that's something new, you should also be able to apply that new knowledge to make sure that others also see what you have invented or what you have explored or what you have found. So you need to be able to give it back, let's say, to the world, to the society in general. That is application. And the very last thing that a scholar also needs to do is explain then to the rest of the world your new insights, to explain how things are working, to explain how you could make use of your new insights, your new knowledge, your research outcomes, let's say. And that closes the circle because when you're explaining it to people, you will probably get questions, you will probably are challenged in another way, and then you start discovering again. So I think that this is a very nice way of describing what a good scholar could mean. But if you have seen the title of the presentation, you have also seen that we are talking about the digital scholar. And then we are going one step further. And now I refer to another book written by Martin Weller, a bit more recent, in 2011. Martin Weller works at the Open University. By the way, this book is open access, so you can download it if you want. And there he describes, he builds further on Boyer's theory, and then he explains that a digital scholar is someone who employs digital, networked, and open approaches to demonstrate specialism in a field. So there is added elements here in the definition. Of course, when we talk about a digital scholar, it should be someone who is knowledgeable about the digital technologies. So it's someone who feels comfortable in the world of today, let's say. But it's not just the technology. It's not just the digital equipment, the digital devices that are important. It's also the way that we are, thanks to the digital world, networking on a broader scale than we ever could do before. So it's also someone who is able to position him or herself in a larger world, make connections with the rest of the world. And it helps then if you have an open mind, if you understand that while you are connected, that you should be interested in what is happening in other parts of the world, that you should be interested in how other people are thinking, behaving, working, living, studying, learning. And that means an open mindset is very important for the digital scholar. If you link that back to Boyer's theory, then you can easily see that what I already said, a digital scholar related to discovery, it means that we as researchers should be able to to know what the new technology could bring to us and how to use the new technologies, the new ICTs, and how we could bring that into our research work, let's say. When we talk about integration as a digital scholar, I immediately make the link with interdisciplinarity. It's now very well possible to connect with people all over the world within, but also with outside your discipline, and make sure that the different disciplines work together. As an engineer, I'm here now telling something about, let's say, teaching and learning. So the integration of the engineering profession, but also the pedagogical insights come nicely together, I think, in my work. Application is also linked to the fact that as a digital scholar, you need to reach out to society to break the walls, let's say, between the university and society, if there are walls at all. But you also need to be sure that what you're doing in the university is not just bound to the, let's say, the ivory tower where we are sometimes compared with. So that public engagement becomes also very possible thanks to the technologies nowadays. And of course, when we are teaching, we also need to think about how we could include the digital pedagogy in our work. And nowadays, there is a lot to do about blended learning, e-learning, flexible learning, and even high flex learning. We have seen what that means in pandemic times. Okay, I will build further on these two books and explain you a little bit more about how you could develop your own skills as a digital scholar. That's the main purpose of my lecture today, because if we hear all these things and if we see what's happening in the world, we sometimes think, are we still fit as scholars, as academics, as professors in that, let's say, old traditional university where the students are changing so much? I love cartoons, and I think that this one here is a nice one explaining what I mean. The young people of today, they live in a digital world, and we as professors, are we adapted to that new digital world? Do we know how to address the needs of of the current generation of students? How do we, come closer to that world of the students, and how far do we need to go in that? That's maybe one question that we should ask. We should also not exaggerate. At the other hand, I mean, we could develop so much digital skills that we are far away from what we used to be, but maybe also far away from what we should become. And even our pupils, our students, do not like the fact that we are so over exaggerating, let's say. So there must be somewhere a new balance to be found between, let's say, the old traditional way of behaving as a scholar and what we could become in the digital world. And I hope that I can explain you a little bit more where to find that balance and how to find it. Okay, as I already told you, the younger generation of students, they are raised in a world in which technology is so prominently available that they cannot imagine that in their teaching and learning experience, in their university or campus experience, there will be no link with technology. As you know, the current generation of students is sometimes described as Gen Z, and that is the generation that has been born in a world where there was already internet. They were raised in an age where there was already smartphones smartphones available, and so they cannot imagine a world in which there is no direct access to internet, for instance, either by Wi-Fi or even wired connections or so. When I'm telling students when I was a young kid that we were using modems to get connected to the internet, they can't even imagine what a modem is nowadays, so to speak. So there is so many technologies, so many devices, apps, software they are using that yeah, they cannot imagine a world without. And it's even becoming worse with Generation Alpha. The reason why I'm showing this slide is that when I was younger as a student, it took about 20 years before we could say, okay, now the characteristics of a generation, a cohort of students has changed. But because the trends in technology and in the digital world are going so quickly nowadays, the generations are coming quicker and quicker one after another. And we are already talking about Generation Alpha. While there is still Generation Z students coming to the university. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. The students are changing, but also what is expected from the students is changing quite a lot. And there is a lot of work done by different associations and in the research describing what kind of new skills that our students should have when they graduate at our university. And we as scholars should prepare our students for all these new skills. This is just one slide explaining a little bit what kind of skills we are talking about. And it's clear what I already told you, for instance, the globally connected world, behaving in that networked world is something that our students should be aware of and should be trained in, and we should help them to get there and to achieve these new skills. So all these aspects lead to the fact that we as scholars, as academics, as teachers, as researchers, we also have to adapt ourselves to a certain extent. And like I said, to find a good balance between what we are used to, the more traditional way of looking at an academic, and a newer version of ourselves, let's say, the digital scholar. Okay. I think that we can now go to a little bit go into a little bit more detail to some models and frameworks that could help us to understand what does it mean exactly, and how can we develop, what kind of competences do we need as a digital scholar. Let me first start with the TPAC model. I don't know, maybe some of you might have heard about this model. The TPAC model explains that as a teacher, as a researcher or an academic, you should have, of course, the knowledge of your discipline, of the courses that you're teaching. That's the content knowledge. That's the most obvious knowledge you need to have. You cannot teach a course of a content that you don't know. Well, that's clear, I think. But at the same time, it's not enough. If you also need to know for that particular content or discipline, what are the best ways to teach this content? So you also need to have knowledge about pedagogy and especially the pedagogy related to the contents of your courses. So that means, for instance, in biology, you will have to do some lab sessions, maybe some field work, and when it comes to physical education, then you probably need to do totally different things. And when it's about engineering, you have to include maybe simulations in your course. You need to let the students experience what it means to become an engineer. So there is a lot of different pedagogical insights that you need to apply and that are fit for the purpose of your course. So that knowledge is the second knowledge. And the final knowledge in the digital world, you also need to know you need to know a little bit what kind of technology that you could use to bring your content in the best pedagogical way. So that means that, for instance, in a biology course, you need to use microscopes, for instance, and maybe you also need to use some Excel sheets to make some graphics or another drawing program to make pictures or whatever. So there is technology that is fit for a specific content and a specific pedagogical approach. And as a scholar, the holy grail in this picture is right in the middle. We need to be able to combine, to integrate all these knowledges into something which is then applicable to our own course. That means that we need to end up in really the middle of the picture, where we can combine all these three knowledges. Not to forget that all these things are happening in a context. And I think that this is very important. My context in Leuven is different from your context in the Philippines. And so the knowledge I have, I love to share it with you, but I'm pretty sure that there needs to be a little bit translation to the local context as well. And so in that respect, I'm really happy to learn from you what kind of new insights that you could bring to me that I can then further use in my own practice, let's say. So the context is an important aspect. The culture, the society, the country, the nature, the weather even. I mean, so there is a lot of aspects that needs to be taken into account. So that is one model of competences that, or in this case, knowledge that a digital scholar should try to acquire, or at least to have in the end. Another model that I would like to share with you is developed by JISC. JISC is a consortium of, it's an organization in the UK, and they are helping universities, higher education institutes with developing, with let's say the support for ICT in teaching and learning and research in their universities. And they've built a digital capability framework. They call it, you can find the link here. The main purpose of the digital capability framework is to try to let the digital scholars become more proficient in the use of ICT in their daily work. And they distinguish, let's say, 5 different aspects of ICT proficiency. It has to do with literacy, information literacy, data media literacy, and media literacy. So it's sort of extra literacy. It's not just related to literature or to mathematics. So there is a specific literacy which is related to technology, to the digital world. Being able to understand, to read the technology in a way, and to be able to play with the technology. And that is one aspect. Another aspect is that you also should be able to create digital content. That's the second circle. So you need to be able, to make your PowerPoints, for instance, or to make nice a simple video maybe, or a nice animation. So there is a new type of skills related to creation of digital content. The next circle in the picture is then related to communication, interaction, collaboration. That is, remember, the networked world. We should be able, thanks to the technology, to connect to the rest of the world and to be sure that we know what's happening in there, and that we can bring that back to our own world, and that we can give back to to the digital world outside us. And that is then linked to the digital learning and development, which is the fourth circle in the picture. So we need to be able, like I just said, I'm also learning all the time when I'm giving lectures, and through the interaction with your audience, with the participants, with your students, you're trying to understand new things and trying to integrate that in your own knowledge and to build further upon that. So that is, again, these four pillars that lead to digital capability. And not to forget here the outer circle in the picture also talks about your digital identity and well-being. We should also understand that in the digital world that we should feel comfortable. We as teachers, as scholars, but also our students, we should try to protect them against abuse in the digital world. We should try to think about issues like privacy, for instance, privacy of your personal data, and these kind of things. So being someone in the digital world, your digital identity, an influencer on certain social media with so many followers, what does that mean? But we have to teach that to our students, but before we can do that, we also have to think about ourselves. What is my role in these social media? How do I would like to be presented there? So that's another aspect of ICT proficiency or digital capability, let's say. So these 5 elements together make you, what they call digital capability. Okay. There is, with regard to the digital literacies, like the first circle in the picture, you remember, there is more explanation in the instruction manuals and guidebooks that JISC is providing. Like I already told you, digital literacies, well, let's start with information literacy. It's knowing how to find information and how to interpret information, maybe also to visualize information, how to manage to share information, and so on. So that's one aspect of digital literacy. Media literacy means that we can distinguish fake news from real news, that we could be selective in what kind of media that we are following, for instance, and trying to make sure that we could use the potential of different media to the best for our work as an academic. Communication and collaboration is also part of that. Digital literacy, career and identity management. I told about digital identity and privacy issues and so on. ICT literacy is being able to, is not getting in panic when something goes wrong with your device or with the network connection, that you have fallback options, that you can select the proper device for the purpose needed, and so on. It also relates to learning skills. There is always new technologies coming, or the existing technologies with new features, and you need to be able to adapt yourself and to learn these new features and try to understand if this is important or not for your work. And all that culminates into what is then called digital scholarship. That means that you are able to benefit from all these new possibilities, capabilities offered by the digital technologies. Okay, so that is another way of looking at the same digital capability model of JISC. Other people have been building further on that. I will not have the time to go into detail, but like you see here, there is people that are really trying to understand what digital capability means, how that relates to teaching and learning, and how you could then go into more detail and activities that could help to understand what does it mean to develop such digital capabilities and competences. Talking about development, there is an interesting framework that I would like to share with you that is developed by the European Commission. It's called their Digital Competence Framework. And again, it's similar to what Jisk mentioned for higher education. There is 5 areas in which the European Commission tries to understand or tries to develop digital competences. Information and data literacy, is clear. Communication and collaboration is a bit the same as what we just discussed. Digital content creation is recognizable. Safety, it's related to that digital identity and well-being. So we need to feel comfortable in the digital world. And then the problem solving is another one that is very important, I think. Sometimes things go wrong, and technology is just technology, and that is not perfect. But we need to know in these situations where something goes wrong, how to be able to solve the problem. It could mean that we solve the problem ourselves, but it could also mean that we know who is capable, is competent to help us. That's another way of problem solving, as important as being able to do it yourself. These 5 different areas are then divided into 21 specific competences by the European Commission. I will not have time to go into detail now, but in the slides you will find more detail on each of these 5 areas. However, what I would like to share with you is a sort of metaphor that the European Commission is presenting as how can you develop these digital competences? And they compare it with the swimmer. In the beginning, when you I don't know if you still remember when you learned to swim. That is, in the beginning, you were just putting your toes in the water and trying to understand. The water is cold today. I don't like. I don't dare to. And then there was someone who said, "Okay, let's try it outside the swimming pool and let's do it as a sort of dry run." We try to exercise the different movements that you need to do as a swimmer, and you exercise these movements outside the swimming pool. And once you understand that, when you're trained a little bit in this, then you can go into the swimming pool, not in the deepest part, but in the lower part of the swimming pool. And maybe there you exercise first what you did on outside the swimming pool, and with guidance and help of your trainer or your mother or father, you're trying to do your best. You're helped, you're supported, and you are trying to enjoy what you're doing, actually, and all of a sudden you do not need the help of someone else. You find a way to behave in the water like a real swimmer. It's still a little bit uneasy, but you know that someone is looking at you, someone will be there to help you. You don't need to get into panic, but you start swimming and you start more and more enjoying, and more you go to the deeper part of the swimming pool. You even start to dive, and you, in the end, you feel so comfortable in the swimming pool that you want to swim in every water, maybe even in the sea and large waters with maybe other challenges, and you even become someone who is training others to start swimming. So that metaphor of getting or becoming a good swimmer applies also very well to someone who is setting first steps in the digital world, getting more and more experienced, enjoying him or herself more and more, finding new challenges, and becoming eventually someone who is training others in becoming more digitally competent. So that metaphor is used by the European Commission when they introduced their digital competence framework and how people could develop their digital competences. They even went one step further and also developed a specific digital competence framework for educators. And the link is here mentioned on the slide. It's again, if you have heard me talking already about the JISC digital capability model, you will recognize different similarities here in this picture. In the middle of the picture, you see what we expect educators, teachers, to have as competences. You should know about digital resources. That means that you either could find good digital resources. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If something exists, then you can reuse it, repurpose it maybe, or you could. If nothing fits your own purpose, let's say, then you need to be able to create new digital resources and share them in the end as well. You need to know about teaching and learning. Remember, in the TPAC model, that is the P, the pedagogical approaches. That is important as a teacher. The pedagogical approaches are prominently in place there. But you should also know how to empower your learners. What I already told you, the distance between us and the students in terms of digital competences, we need to think about that gap and how do we bridge that gap? How can we make sure that what we know is shared with the learners, and how do we know that it fits in their, let's say, digital world, in the world in which they are living and studying. So how to engage the students is an important aspect of digital competences. And then we also need to evaluate students and make sure that that is also done in a proper digital way. That could be still something like classical, traditional exams, maybe with the use of digital tools, or we could go all the other way around and try to find totally new ways of assessment in the digital world. I already gave a webinar a couple of weeks ago on specifically on assessment. And then there is, next to this, the bulk in the middle of this digital competence framework, there is also at the left side where something which is related to professional competences. That means that you as a scholar, you also need to work on yourself, on your own personality, your digital personality, your digital identity, your professionalization in the digital world. So that is an extra that we need to take care of as a digital scholar. And having said that, if we have this own personal skills, if we know about the traditional, let's say, TPAC aspects in the middle, then we also have the right-hand side of the picture where we need to work on the digital competences of our learners, which means that we have to share our competences, our ideas with our students and make sure that they also become more digitally competent. Remember, the swimmer becoming a trainer of swimmers. Yeah, so that is the whole framework of the European Commission in terms of development digital competences for educators. Another framework I would like to show you here is something that I developed together with colleagues from the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. It's our digital scholar framework. And it's, there are 3 dimensions in this picture. And one dimension is the outer arrows, which are quite common, like I already mentioned. The traditional way of looking at an academic, at a scholar, is someone who is involved in teaching, who is involved in research, who is involved in community service. And this dimension comes in everything we do as a scholar. And it's like a turning wheel. It goes, yeah, well, maybe I should even add the arrows in the opposite direction. It goes in all directions, let's say. It is the reason why we exist, let's say, as academics. And it's also the three missions of a university. So that is something that we have to relate to. That's one dimension. Another dimension is related to the blue circles in the middle. And it goes from yourself over teams, institutions, society to the global world. What do we mean by that? As a digital scholar, talking about digital identity, you as a person, you have to position yourself in that digital world. You have to know where is myself between brackets here in that digital world. How do I want to behave in that digital world? One question, for instance, do I mix my Facebook account, my private Facebook account, with what students might see about me on Facebook? Is that something that I feel comfortable with, or do I want to make clear distinctions between I do privately or what I do professionally on social media? Your stance, your position in that digital world is important. And having said that, you are not an individual on its own. Yeah, you are, but you are not working as an individual on your own. You're working in a team. It could be a teaching team. It could be your research team. It could be the relations supervisor, PhD, and so on. So that there is people close to you that are working with you, and you have to find a way to network with them. Remember the networked aspect of the digital scholar by Martin Weller. Your team is working in an institution, and the institution has some rules, has some infrastructure that is available for you, and so you need to be able to work within these boundaries of your institution. The institution itself is then linked to society, and you have to break the walls between your institution and society and make direct links with society to engage the society in what you're doing, and vice versa, giving back to society what you think that you have learned and that you could apply in the society. That's your direct environment, let's say. And then, of course, there is the global aspect nowadays. Thanks to the technology, societies are more open than ever before, and we can move from one, let's say, local, regional society to others. Virtually or even face-to-face, and especially virtually. With the digital competence you have, you will be able to connect what you're doing to the, let's say, the global world. You have to position yourself on one of these blue circles, and it could be for certain activities that you're more to the inner circle, and it could be that for other activities you feel more comfortable at the outside circles. Growing means that you find your way in there, in these circles. That's the second dimension in the picture. The third dimension in the picture is more related to what you see there, the pizza pies. So the author on top becomes storyteller, creator, integrator, networker. That's also related to typically technology. The author is related to text, storyteller is related to audio, creator is more related to video, integrator more to multimedia, and networker more to social media. So there is for certain aspects of your work, you will have to behave as an author. For instance, when you write scientific papers, when you, as a result of your research, you're more into the role of an author. If you're addressing your students in a face-to-face environment, a bit like what I'm doing right now, you're more a storyteller. You're telling a story. You see my video, but you hear my voice. That's the most important aspect. of what we are doing today. Creator, yeah, like I already told you, that is creating digital resources, digital learning materials, digital, maybe some video simulations, whatever, that could underline your story, that could illustrate your story. And then the integrator is someone who is able to integrate all these these capacities into a more advanced product, a more advanced outcome, a more tangible integrated learning material, research material, or whatever. And the networker, I think that speaks for itself. That then you go further, you connect with the rest of the world, you share your ideas in well, with proper technologies. In most cases, that could be social media. So these dimensions, these 3 dimensions, could also help you to understand what it means to behave as a digital scholar. And they are linked to each other. And the whole idea of this picture is that, that it's not related to, well, you could do that related to maturity levels, but it's not so that if you're in the middle of the blue circles, for instance, that you still have to grow to the global, to the outside circle, that is a direct linear way to get from less experience to more experience. No, that's not the purpose of this picture. It simply says that for certain aspects of your work as a digital scholar, you will feel that you are in one position of this picture, and for other aspects, you feel more comfortable in another place in this diagram. So that's the way that you should look at this framework. Okay. Last part of my presentation will be about the future digital scholar. So I explained a little bit of context. I've given you some models and talked about what kind of competences we are talking here when it becomes when we are talking about a digital scholar. Sorry, but now how can we develop? How can we? What is important for a digital scholar? Let's say not only for today, but also for tomorrow. And I will give you some advice. And the first one is we need to be agile. Agile is a buzzword in software engineering nowadays. There is many ways of developing good software products, and we used to do that in a very linear way. That was called the waterfall model. You start with an idea, you then develop specifications, you develop a plan, and then you implement each step of the plan one after another, and then finally you end up with a product. That is a bit the let's say in pedagogical instructional design. We are familiar with the ADI model, with the different steps, starting from an analysis, then you design your course or curriculum, and then you develop all the elements of the course, and then you implement the course, you teach the course, and you evaluate what you're doing and see how you could improve your course. That's a very linear, straightforward way of dealing with instructional design. Also, as a digital scholar, it's still a good model. It's something that you could use and that you could structure the way that you are working as a digital scholar. But like I said, in the current times, we are more and more agile, and that also means that in the instructional design, we will probably leave the ADI model, the very linear and straightforward model, to something which is totally different, where we also involve the users, which are in our case the students, from the real beginning, and that we try to understand what are our students needed here, how can we adapt to the needs of our students, and who else could do that better than the students themselves. So we involve the students in a co-creation project where we learn from them, where they can develop maybe things for us, where they can be co-creators of learning materials, where they are also involved in the evaluation, of course, and that we go through a non-linear, let's say, pathway to develop a course together with the students. So in an iterative way, each step in the process is done in an iterative way. And you can even go further and iterate between the steps, not in the steps alone, but also between the steps. So that agile philosophy is something which is so prominently present now in starting in software engineering, but in many other disciplines, that becomes a sort of mainstream attitude. And as a digital scholar, I think we need to feel comfortable in such an agile world. It's also the way that our students are thinking, I have to say, coming back to Generation Z. If you read the literature about them, you will see that they are more flexible, and that a linear way of thinking is not their framework, let's say. They are much more alinear and asynchronous thinkers. So a more agile methodology approach would help. Another thing that I could recommend is that we need to watch the trends. Sorry, I have to drink a little bit. When it comes to technology, you might be familiar with the Gartner's hype cycle, explaining that whenever a new technology pops up, oh yeah, we want to have that technology. Oh yeah, that's the way to go. That will change the world. Whoops, the technology gets more and more popular. And at a certain point, we reach the hype level. That's the peak here in the picture, where everyone thinks, oh yeah, we should go to the newest Apple smartphone, or we should now all have that new camera or whatever. So that we are hyping a certain technology, and then we realize, oops, maybe it's not that important, or it's maybe not that fancy, or it's maybe not that good for everything. And once we are over that hype, the popularity of the technology or the app drops tremendously. And then it's matter of finding a new balance, and trying to understand what is the real potential. Is it really necessary? How can we improve it maybe? How can we maybe find the proper use of that new tool? How can we fine-tune it so that it could serve a better goal, let's say? And then we end up with climbing a smaller uphill rise in the curve, and finally we end up with a sort of plateau where we see, okay, now this is sort of common technology, commonly available device, something that we could use in our daily practice, and that we feel comfortable with, or that a large community feels comfortable with. It becomes also affordable at that moment in terms of price, and maybe the quality is also improved so that it really is a robust, trustful application that we could use for teaching and learning. So that is, in general, the Gartner's hype cycle, and people are then trying to understand where new technologies nowadays could be pointed on the curve. And for instance, if you look at mobile learning, then you see that mobile learning is already sort of in a steady state phase. We think that indeed our mobile devices might have some potential in teaching and learning, and so the hype is over, and we understand the let's say the added value of mobile learning. MOOCs, for instance, that was overhyped a couple of years ago. Everyone wanted to have MOOCs, and MOOCs was the way to learn, and MOOCs would conquer the world, let's say. So that was really overhyped, and then it dropped down tremendously. On this picture in 2019, it's still in the deepest valley, let's say, of the curve. It has become a little bit more to the right on the picture, so there is now a better understanding of what is the real value of MOOCs, and how far do we need to go as a university in that MOOC hype, for instance, becomes more and more clear. So it's going more and more towards a steady state situation, let's say. And you can do that for all kinds of technologies, like you can see on this picture here. I just invite you to find or to think about yourself, where would you put new technologies on this hype curve. Another trend report I would like to recommend is the EDUCAUSE Horizon report. What they do is they do a Delphi study with experts all over the world, and try to understand what are the new technologies that will have an impact on our teaching and learning, on our behavior as a scholar, and also in research. But the one that I've shown here is specifically related to teaching and learning. And so they are trying to see what are the trends and technologies that we will have to follow in the next coming years. And based on an expert panel and a Delphi study, they are able to identify a couple of trends, a couple of technologies that it's worthwhile looking at as academics. And yeah, I don't have time enough, I think, to go into detail. But what they do is they link these technologies to other trends as well in society, because the trend in itself is important, and technology is important. But it's also important to contextualize these trends and to see in what kind of context, political context, societal context, that these new technologies might have an impact, yes or no. And so, for instance, artificial intelligence is such a new technology that is really overhyped now in education, in all sectors, by the way. So we also have to look at artificial intelligence in higher education. But what does that mean in society? What the ethical issues related to artificial intelligence, for instance? How do we feel if robots are taking over the work that we are doing? Can we imagine artificial intelligence replacing the work we do as a scholar in teaching or in researching? So there is a lot of other aspects that are related to a technological trend, and that we also should look at. Is society accepting the fact that smart technology is introduced in households, on the streets, in the cities, and so on? If that is the case, then how do we find these trends important in teaching and learning, for instance? So that is the sort of questions that are raised in that the technology trend report by EDUCAUSE. That's another slide here. That economical trends is also an important aspect, for instance. A second report that I would like you to recommend and to look at and to follow, actually, is then more related to the pedagogical insights, the pedagogical trends. And here I recommend the report written by the Open University. And it's they do not use a Delphi study or an expert panel. Well, they still use an expert panel. And what they actually do is give a sort of snapshot of what is important nowadays in pedagogy, and how to innovate pedagogy thanks to the digital world in which we are living. So that's another rich resource, let's say, for you as a digital scholar to think about what your role would be, or how you would evolve or develop yourself or professionalize yourself, to look at these reports. And there is about 10, let's say, innovating scenarios or innovating principles or trends that they put forward each year. And so the 2021 has been published a couple of months ago. Again, it's publicly available, so you can just go and Google it, and you will find the 10, let's say, important pedagogical trends. Maybe one that I would like to emphasize here a little bit, because it's also part of the further work that I would like to do with you, is the evidence-based teaching, which means that what we are doing in the classroom, either face-to-face or in the virtual classroom, should be should be evidence-based, should be based on actual, let's say, evaluation of what we are doing, should be based on research we are doing ourselves on our teaching work. So we constantly need to be sure that steps that we are taking as digital scholars, as digital teachers, that these steps have some foundation, some research that where it's based upon. So the evidence-based teaching is identified by the Open University as one important trend that becomes more and more important in the future. And so what we will do together with some of you at least comes in timely, I think, because it is identified as such a trend for the future. And that is also my next recommendation that I would like to make. If you want to develop as a digital scholar, if you want to professionalize, you should engage in action research. You should constantly try to understand what you're doing in that digital world. What does it mean? Is it correct? Is it okay? Can I improve it? How does it have an impact on myself? How does it have an impact on my students? So we need to find the proper questions, research questions, but also constantly think about how we could answer these questions, and then learn from these questions. Remember what Boyer said, we have to discover, we have to analyze, to integrate, and then to teach. So that is what we also try to do in action research. So we in action as a digital scholar have to constantly ask ourselves the question: are we doing it in a proper way? Let's say. And like I said, don't forget the partners in your research. And I think I don't have time enough to go into detail, but I already mentioned that students might be co-creators in the whole process. Co-creators, but they are very important stakeholders in the research. And so also in our action research, we could engage students very well. And I think that this is an important message I would like to bring. For us to develop as a digital scholar, we can learn a lot from our students. And so involve the students at all times could help us to become a better digital scholar ourselves. Okay, and the next advice I would like to give is that when we all move to digital scholarship, that means a real change for yourself, but also for the whole institution in which you're working. And maybe we need to lead the change. So you will always have, when new things come up, when innovative approaches are put forward, you will always have people that are really engaged, and they are the innovators at the left side of the picture. That are the ones that you just have to name a thing, and they immediately see a lot of opportunities, and they jump on it, and they try to implement that innovation. And sometimes they don't think enough. I said, and they just they blindly go into the hype and try to innovate. But you have then people that are more early adopters, that are the ones that are thinking, okay, yeah, now I see the hype is over, and I can try to understand better. I've seen how it goes wrong. I've seen also some potential. Now I can further develop. Now I really want to see what I can do as a digital scholar with that new technology. So that are the early adopters. The majority of our colleagues are, in the green part of the curve. You have an early majority, the ones that say, oh yeah, okay, the university says we should go that way, so we go that way, or society is demanding something, yes, we do that. So they see, okay, we are not the ones that are believing in the hype, but once the hype is over, that's the time that we will engage ourselves and use the new technology or the innovative part. So that's the majority. And then you still have, and we have to admit, some people in the university or in the academic world that are at the right-hand side of the curve, and that needs a lot of time to actually implement the new things. Maybe even never. They will even never do it. So that's the laggards at the right-hand side of the curve. Another metaphor illustrating a little bit the same is the pencil metaphor. I will leave it up to you so that we still have a little bit time for questions. But you also have there the leaders at the point of the pencil. You have the wood in the middle that are the people that's the majority. That is the potential of your institution. That's the way to build upon when you want to start bigger projects based on new things. And then at the left-hand side, you have the erasers who don't want to engage, who even want to to obstruct innovation and so on. Okay, that is the pencil metaphor. It's also an illustration of, and I invite you to understand where is your position. Are you more a leader? Are you more in the green side of the pencil, or are you someone who is more at the left-hand side here of the picture? And we should not deny that there will always be some resistance when you introduce new things, and we should also sometimes reflect a little bit upon the innovation itself. Is it really something important? Will it really make a difference? Will it really have an impact on what I'm doing as a scholar with my students in my institution or in society in general? So that will conclude my presentation. The best advice I can give to become a digital scholar is go digital. And I did some effort here on explaining what the acronym digital could mean. So the D could stand for dare. So that means don't wait, don't hesitate, jump into the water, even in the deep water, be a bit adventurous, go for it. The first I could stand for ignite. That's also a bit similar. Start right away. Try to inspire your peers. Try to encourage your colleagues and spark new ideas. Grow. You will have to grow from a basic level, let's say, of digital competency to higher levels, but take your time and don't wait. So become wiser and increase your impact. That's growing. Interacting, networking, like I said, is a very important aspect. Be open there. So that don't hide. Don't think that social networks have no value. I think interaction with students is important, but with society as well. Build your community, your network. Try is that discovery aspect of Boyer. Experiment, explore new things, practice, and at the other hand, don't reinvent the wheel. If something already exists, then you don't have to develop it yourself. You can simply try it. And then appeal means that you have to invite people to make sure that they understand your invention or your research findings, outcomes, to make sure that other people. I sometimes would say here that you have followers in the digital world. So make sure that your message is heard. And then finally learn, and that's what we're all doing today. You're listening to me, but I will be listening to your questions and to your remarks, and try to learn myself also from each opportunity I have to become wiser. And then the final idea that I would like to share is that what I've been telling you today is based on years of experience in trainings and instruction all over the world. And I'm preparing a book together with my colleagues in Stellenbosch with exactly the same title as my lecture today, involving evolving as a digital scholar. This will be published if things go well in a couple of months from now, and it will be available as an open access book. So you will be able to download it for free. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I'm open for some questions. Maybe you can stop sharing my screen.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Wim, for the very comprehensive discussion and talk about evolving as a digital scholar, especially teaching and researching in the digital world. All right, at this part, our guest speaker will be entertaining questions from our participants. We have some questions from the chat box, or our audience also from the live stream could also give their comments or suggestions or questions, even questions that they want our guest speaker to answer. All right, I think we'll try to look for questions here. Maybe we would like to ask our participants now to open their camera because a while ago they were very inclined to opening their cameras so that our um, guest speaker could also interact with us. So while there is no question, I think I will throw the first one. Is it okay, Professor Wim?
Sure.
All right. In our practice here, especially in developing learning materials or coursework for our students, we usually or commonly use the ADDIE model, which is what, based on what you said, was really old and very linear. And it's my first time to hear the SAM model, in which we have to um, encourage our students to be co-creators of the coursework or learning materials for our classes. Now, my question is, um, I don't know if this is a relevant question, but this just comes to my mind first. How do we like encourage our students to become co-creators? Especially for me, that I start with the ADDIE model, and I just assume that I was able to target their learning needs because in the ADDIE model we start with the analysis, but here there is a new model.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good question. Part of the answer is that students actually want to become co-creators. We did some studies in our university to characterize the current cohort or generation of students. And one of the aspects that students find very important being a student in the university is that they would like to be considered as partners in the whole teaching and learning process, let's say, which means that yeah, when I was a student, I remember that we even had to raise when a professor entered the lecture hall. That is over now, and unfortunately, let's say the threshold for students to address a professor has become much lower than it used to be, and the current generation of young people, they really want to let their voice heard. They really want to be partner in, like I said, in the teaching and learning process, like they want to be partner in all other processes in society. And so they want to be considered as serious actors in the whole process. So how do you let the students become co-creators? Part of the answer is that you don't have to let them become co-creators. They really want to become co-creators, and so at least that's something that could work here in my context. We need to do maybe a bit of research if that is also applicable to the Philippines. But having said that, there are maybe some possibilities that you could let students really become co-creators. For instance, in a course that I'm teaching, we let the students develop videos, and what we then ask to the students is, if you have developed your video, is it possible that we use your video next year to show to the next cohort of students as learning materials? We will use your video and show it and let the students talk about it. Maybe they can get inspired by the video. Maybe they see what goes well and what goes wrong with the video. And that could be then a learning resource for the next generation of students and the next cohort of students. And having done that, the new cohort of students has seen the videos of the previous cohort. And that gives them, let's say, the enthusiasm to engage themselves in producing even better videos. So because they know that their videos will then be used by the next cohort of students. Next year, their videos will be learning material for the next group of students. So that gives it a very easy way of letting students develop learning materials, learning resources at that point. And it, with video, which is modern technology, so to say, they can actually do that in a very easy way. I don't know if that gives an answer to your question, but that's what comes in my mind first now.
Yeah, I think that is a good question because I was thinking about how to really help my students to um, like appreciate the role as a co-creator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very
There is
much,
maybe,
Professor.
if there is other questions, I can answer the other question. But another way of being a co-creator is that, for instance, there is a lot to say about multiple choice questions and multiple choice exams or assessment, let's say. Why not let the students formulate good multiple choice questions rather than you giving them the multiple choice questions, so that they can ask a question about a very relevant topic in the course, and they can then try to formulate good and bad answers to that question. And they also have to explain why there is good and bad answers on the question. So that lets them also reflect on the course. And then you have a whole set of good research, good questions that you could maybe use in a test later on. So why not?
Yeah, that's good. That's also a good skill for teaching assessment among student teachers.
Yeah, right.
Actually, the Professor Wim, we also have another question from Professor Alan Vergara. His question is, can you share with us your experiences and interventions in teaching your students in handling practical laboratories in the digital world?
Yeah, that's a good one, well, because it's a difficult one. There is indeed. Um, in many cases, it's not possible to make a fully virtual or digital version of a good lab session. But what you could do is you could make it a sort of mixed format, and you could prepare your students for the lab sessions in a digital way. You could explain maybe safety rules they have to respect when they enter the lab, and they have to watch a video, and they have to maybe do a multiple choice assessment, so that you know that they are prepared for the safety aspects in the lab. Maybe you could explain the how to use the equipment also with an instructional video beforehand. That students have to watch before they enter the lab, so that you don't have to explain the equipment before they can start doing the experiment. Maybe you could introduce, let's say, some theoretical work that students have to do before they can go into the experiment, and you could do that in a digital way. So there is a lot that you could do in the preparatory phase in the digital world, and then once the students are coming into the lab, they are better prepared. They can reduce the lab time, and they can they can focus on what they really need to do in the lab. And then afterwards, again, you could continue in a digital way. If they have assembled the data in the lab, the analysis and synthesis can be done afterwards. So my answer to that question would be, for certain aspects, it's not possible to simply replace it in a digital way, but you can still use the digital environment to prepare and to do some post-processing of the lab. For some lab sessions, you can replace that by totally digital simulations, and that is another way of dealing with it. But sometimes you simply have to use the buttons and press the buttons and the wheels and so on your equipment. That you cannot do that all virtually. I hope that gives sort of an answer.
Yes, I hope that is that question is addressed by Dr. Wim. So now, do you have other questions? Yeah, we also have another question. Let me check. The next question is from um, Professor Ona Pierre Tale. Hello, ma'am. Hi, Professor Wim. This is Ona, AVML 2018. Thank you for your lecture. The digital scholar framework is interesting. What for you is the most important framework, teaching, research, or service? What for you is the most important in the framework, teaching, research, or service?
Yeah, I think they are all important. The let's say the way we symbolize it with turning arrows as a sort of turning wheel around all the other things is also symbolizing in a way that you cannot teach if you are not doing research in a university. I mean, if you want to become a digital scholar, it might be that your main focus is on teaching, but still then you need to do some action research. Remember that this is one of the advices I've given you. So that even as a teacher, you always have to ask yourself, am I doing it the right way? And trying to answer that question means that you engage also in some research. So that means that the teaching and research, they go hand in hand. And like I mentioned in the beginning, with referring to Boyer and also to Weller, that as a teacher and a researcher, you have a responsibility towards society. In the first place, to the students, which is that's a cohort of representatives of the society, let's say. And so raising the competences of your students is already contributing to developing society in general. But I think that you should see it a bit broader, and you should try to lower, let's say, the thresholds between the university and society in both directions. So I cannot imagine that you as a teacher are not engaged in one or another way in what's happening in society. The same is true for your research. So answering the question, what is most important, is a very difficult one for me. I think they are equally important, and they are so much interlinked with each other that it would be not possible to say one of the three is more important. I know that in some universities it is important in terms of getting promotion, and that you have to focus on your research first, and then teaching, and then eventually maybe also on society. But I think in my university, at least, we have understood that the three are very important. And sometimes in your career as an academic, as a scholar, you will have to focus on your teaching because you're developing a new course, or there is new you want to innovate your course with some new technology or new pedagogical approach, and then you have to really focus on your teaching, and that means that maybe your research is a bit less in that year, but the next year the roles might be different, and next year you might have a big research project that you want to focus on, and then you can build upon the expertise you have had with your course previous years. So you can you don't want to innovate each year your course, so you can really focus on the research at that moment. So that there might be over a period that there might be different focuses on what you're doing, which is okay, I think. But in all, and over a larger period seen, the three are equally important. That's my viewpoint on this. Does that answer the question?
I hope that is a helpful insight, Ma'am Ona, about your question to our guest speaker. We also have another question from Sir Alan Vergara, Professor Wim. His question is, do you have any recommended applications at this point in a digital world that will help teachers monitor their students taking an assessment with all honesty?
Yeah. That's a pertinent question, right? I think I also answered that question in a previous lecture I've given, or when we were talking about assessment in particular. I think my answer is that yes, you can find proctoring tools and proctoring procedures and approaches, and that is maybe a way to go in certain circumstances. But I would more prefer to look at the assessment itself, and try to find ways of assessing the students where it doesn't matter that or whether it's not important that you really can control and monitor what the student is doing. And just to illustrate my point, if you ask students to write a book review, you know that they will cheat. You know that they will look around on the internet, and that they will find resources where such a book review is available, and that they will try to copy and paste. But then the smarter way of dealing with this is that you ask the students to actually find 3 good book reviews, and that they have to describe why they find them good, and then maybe make a selection and try to say which one of the 3 that they found is closer to a really good book review than the others. So what you're trying to do is changing the way that you are assessing the students in such a way that it's less important that you can control and monitor what the student is doing, but that you make it smarter assessments. I know that this is not a direct answer. I cannot just give you some tools or applications, but I also think that it's more a creative way of thinking how to assess the students, knowing that they will probably know the tools better than you as a digital scholar, and then trying to be smarter than the students and finding better ways of assessment is my advice.
I hope that advice is also very helpful, um, Sir Aline, about integrity of assessment or students honestly answering their
Yep.
tests. Now, we have also another question from Dr. Monera Salik. She says, thank you, Dr. Pitigim, for the nice presentation in teaching and researching in a digital world. I appreciate the go digital advice. Sir, may I know if your university, the KU Leuven, has a program on PhD in science education? I think she's talking about future collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very nice question, and thank you for that. Yes, we do have all kinds of PhD programs in our university, and especially in science education. And we do have a virtual organization in the university called LISEC, and that stands for the Leuven Engineering and Science Education Center. That is grouping all the research done by different researchers in different faculties, including the science faculty, where we do projects on how to improve the teaching and learning in these faculties. And so, especially in science education, I know colleagues that are very much interested in conceptual learning. That is a big issue there. There is a lot to do about the transition from secondary schools to higher education. And yeah, myself, I'm also a member of that LISEC community. And yeah, like you can imagine, my interest is in how learning technologies could improve the teaching and learning, including I'm an engineer by background, but like I said, there is that interdisciplinary approach in LISEC. So there is also spillover to science education. So yes, if you would like to join us, you have to look at the website of the university and maybe, or if you have grants from the Philippines, you can always contact me and we can maybe look for opportunities how we could work together.
That would be very interesting. We also have a comment from Professor Zabala. She said it's quite difficult to balance research, teaching, and service, especially maybe for in our practice here in MSU-IIT.
Yeah, I think that's true, and like I said, it might be that in what I like, at least in my university, is that when you need to get evaluated as a teacher, or when you want to get some promotion in the university, that you have to focus on a 5-year time span, and you have to explain what you did in these 5 years with regard to teaching, research, and community service. And like I said, it could be that at certain points in this 5-year period, your focus is really on teaching, and then another period, you're focusing more on your research. And like I said, I think that whatever you do, teaching and research should be linked to society. So that makes it possible to describe over a 5-year time span how you have dealt with the 3 different aspects of your job, and how you find the balance over a 5-year time span. It's not possible to do that year per year. I think that would not be wise to do so. But like I said, the whole university also should understand that, and change is not only with yourself, but change is also needed at the institution level, and so we also need to make sure that the university management is involved in that change process.
That's true. I personally agree with your idea, Professor Wim. And I think at this point, there are no other questions. So um, I think we have to wrap up our session. So
Okay.
we would really like, and we are really grateful for sharing your expertise as our guest speaker um, in our webinar this afternoon, especially sharing your expertise in the areas of teaching, research, and innovation and in the digital world. And we hope that with your help, Professor Wim, we will be able to improve the culture of research in the College of Education. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and for being with us, and also for your active participation and your questions. They were all highly appreciated. Thank you so much for your time. And this has been your moderator, Jero Bisimilia, and to the organizers of this webinar session. Thank you very much. And that will be all. See you next time.
Thank you very much. You did a great job.
Thank you, Professor Wim.
All the best for everyone.